following is a Galactic Digital Studios production. Like a phoenix rising from the ashes, or Lauren Boebert's boy toy during a musical of Beetlejuice, you can call it a comeback if you want, but yes, I am back. Do not adjust your podcasting or YouTube dials. This is News Desk, part of the Closing Tag Network. I am Raul Smith. I am head of development and design over at Galactic Digital Studios. If you are wanting video editing, logo design, graphic design, web development, or SEO services done for your business, search for Galactic Digital Studios at galacticdigitalstudios.com. Galactic Digital Studios, out of this world service at down-to-earth prices. I've got a loaded show today scheduled, and as I mentioned in my previous video on this feed, the plan is to do a full recording every week and distribute the videos to the appropriate titles as we go. So without further ado, let's get started. But before I go deep diving into my topics for today, I do want to send out a special heartfelt shout out to the innocent people caught in the crossfire recently in this Israel versus Hamas war. As of this recording, over 1,600 people have died as a result of this senseless war, a war that doesn't appear to be ending anytime soon. If you want to help the victims and refugees of this war, I don't know all the information on how to help, but I am certain that it is out there somewhere. If you can donate blood, I'm certain that blood is going to be desperately needed in times like these. So without question, I would definitely suggest the International Committee of the Red Cross. Go donate blood if you can. You could help save a stranger's life. Which leads me to my first topic for today. As I mentioned before, as of this recording, over 1,600 people have died needlessly after Hamas launched a series of aerial attacks on Israel, killing both Israelis and Palestinians. The fact of the matter is that these terrorist organizations, and let's be blunt about this, they don't seem to care about hurting innocent civilians. They will use whatever means they can to get people behind their cause, and in a lot of ways, unfortunately, it's working. And it's working because of history. Let's take a step back to before I'm sure some of you were even born. The United States, let's be honest, a lot of other powers in the world have meddled in the affairs of countries and powers in the Middle East since the dawn of the Cold War. In fact, the United States faced war crime charges back in the 80s over this. Many who remembered the trial of Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North will remember that he helped funnel weapons and funds that went towards weapons to both Iran and the Contras. In fact, if not for a pardon from then President George H.W. Bush, the first one, many of those people would probably be serving lengthy prison sentences right now. From 1981 to 1986, the United States military had been engaging in both under-the-table arms dealings and shadow operation training exercises with both the Iranian government and the Contras, who were heavily opposed to the Iranian government at the time. We can go even further back than that, to the entire Vietnam War and the Cuban Missile Crisis, both of which were disputes caused by the Soviet government sending weapons and funds to those respective governments. There was actually a legitimate scare that the Cubans were prepared to use Russian-supplied nuclear weapons against the United States. Thankfully, that never happened, and everybody walked away without so much a bloody nose. Hurt feelings, yes. Physical ailments, not so much. Vietnam wasn't so fortunate. Up until the Second Gulf War, the United States suffered the most casualties during the Vietnam War than in any other war that they've ever participated in, save the Civil War. That's a statement. Let that sink in for a minute. Going back to my point about Iran, a lot of these weapons that the US and Russia gifted under the table to both sides ended up in the hands of militant governments, or militant groups, I should say, in the region, including familiar names like the Taliban and Al Qaeda. Remember those guys? The Soviets also gifted weapons around that same time that Iran was having its issues to Afghanistan soldiers, many of whom would help form the Taliban. There has never been a more volatile, more tenuous time in history of the world in any one particular region of the world, quite like the last 100 years have been in the Middle East. Now, I laughed every time someone would say, oh, we're over there to help stabilize the region, when in reality, the American involvement is what helped destabilize the region in the first place. And no, we're not alone in that regard. We had a lot of help from our best frenemies over in the USSR. But the reason I bring all of this up right now in relations to Israel and Hamas fighting each other is, guess where both sides got a lot of their weapons that are currently being used in that fight? You guessed it, the United States and Russia. Now, in fairness to the US, Russia has been making a play to destabilize the entire region to help it make it easier for them to expand and retake the motherland. Good old Vladimir Putin. I say that sarcastically. Unfortunately, this is not an easy situation, and there is no easy solution. There was a wise man that I once worked with years ago. His name was Kerry. No, not the Kerry you're thinking of. He and I would have these philosophical debates about war and about countries fighting over resources and whatnot, which is essentially why Russia is fighting Ukraine right now. He used to tell me it's a lot easier to fight a nation than an ideal. I'm going to repeat that. It's a lot easier to fight a nation than an ideal. What he meant by that is this. Let's take the war against Iraq, for example. The first Gulf War, back in 1991. Saddam Hussein decided one day, you know what? I need a beach house in Kuwait. Let's go invade it. Okay, he probably didn't say that exactly, but for whatever reason, he felt he needed to invade Kuwait and was threatening to invade Saudi Arabia next. 27 nations, including the United States, formed a task force called Operation Desert Storm. It was very easy for the task force to drive Hussein and his armies back to Baghdad. Again, because there was a tangible government. Let's even go as far back as the Second World War. There were 3 tangible targets for the Allies to take down. The Italians, that was short-lived, the Nazis, and the Japanese Empire. And these tangible nations were taken down within a few years after the US and Britain stormed Normandy. Now, it also helped that Russia kept the fighting up with the Germans on the Eastern Front. Let's definitely recognize their contributions on that. But then you take a look at wars like Iran versus Contra, wars like the Korean War, wars like Vietnam, wars like the War on Terror, the result of 9/11. Those weren't so much tangible targets. Those weren't governments that it would have been easy to go in, take down a capital or a stationary target, and the rest crumbles. There's no head to chop off the snake. These were wars that were fought over ideals. Democracy versus communism. Western freedom versus radical Islamic ideology. Even now with Russia and Hamas, or not Russia and Hamas, Israel and Hamas, you were talking about a set government like Jerusalem fighting an ideology not a tangible set target. For every radical Islamist you kill, you are also helping kill 20 civilians. And those 20 civilian surviving loved ones are then potentially converted and recruited into the radical Islamic militant groups, whether it be Hamas, Al-Qaeda, Taliban, whoever. I'd love to sit here and tell you that there's an easy solution to this problem, but I don't think there is. It's easy to say, well, just stop fighting over which deity is better. But again, you're fighting an ideal. Even by refusing to fight, you're inviting a fight. Look at 9/11. Al-Qaeda was the one that hijacked the planes and flew them into the towers. Look at Hamas. They were the ones that launched the first strike against Israel. But there's a reason why they are doing this. Because with every action taken in these matters, there's a stronger, more violent reaction. For every plane flown into a New York skyscraper, 20 drone attacks were launched. And let's just say the generals weren't exactly picky with their targets. For every missile launched at Israel, the Gaza Strip suffers as a result of it. Even now, as of this recording, Israel is warning all civilians in the Gaza Strip to evacuate. The more civilians that die as a result of these strike, counter-strike attacks, the more the militant forces are able to brainwash everyday people into thinking that the Western forces are evil and infidels, and we're the good guys. We're the ones fighting for our lives over here. There was a former CIA intelligence agent who spent some time undercover during the Afghanistan war. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. She said that these militant groups liken their struggle against the West to the Rebel Alliance in Star Wars. That they view themselves as Luke Skywalker, as the rebels, as the good guys. And the West and Israel are the evil empire. They're the Darth Vader. Sadly, I don't know if there is an easy way out of all this fighting in the Middle East. And the more events like what's happening in Israel right now that happen, the more I'm convinced that the fighting will never end. A friendly reminder to check out the blogs that I write occasionally on theclosingtag.com. Just go to the upper right corner and you will see either a hamburger menu or a network tab. Just go to the network tab, select which blog you want to catch up on, and there you go. All blogs are separated by topic so as to not dilute the main feed. Also, while you are there, be sure to click the donate button. I may not do this as a full-time job, but every little bit helps to secure better equipment, better soundproofing, just things in general. Your donations will also earn you a special shout out if you want one on the air. Again, that's theclosingtag.com. That's the closing tag. Don't forget the at the beginning. Theclosingtag.com. We should be putting archives from YouTube on the appropriate channels as well in the coming weeks. Sorry, I have to adjust myself because, yeah, this is going to be fun. So you just know, I could not do a news desk episode without talking about everybody's favorite orange bumbling idiot, former president, yes, former President Donald Trump. I know that gets under the craw of some people that are listening to this, but as I've clearly demonstrated in the past, I don't care. Donald Trump was recently issued a gag order after he once again insisted that the election was stolen and that instead of being indicted, he should be commended for bringing to light the corruption within the government. This is coming off of 4, yes, count them, 4 indictments against the former president. So since I haven't really had a chance to break it down in real time, let's break down each indictment one by one. The first one was not really anything special. It was simply brought upon after federal trade officials discovered that Trump had used campaign and government funds to pay off porn stars for their silence about their affairs with Trump, most notably Stormy Daniels. According to court documents, the indictment includes 34 counts of falsifying business records, all felonies. While it wasn't anything special, it was the first of 4 dominoes to fall. The second was a little steeper and not quite so easy to dismiss. This one was in connection with the classified documents that were found at Trump's golf course in Mar-a-Lago, Florida. The documents contained classified intelligence and military strategic documents that outlined military tactics and intelligence on both the United States and her allies. After Trump was informed by the United States government to return the documents, informed is a nice word. We'll say he was told to do so. Trump lied about having the documents and said that they weren't there. After the FBI raided Mar-a-Lago, they discovered, and they have photographic evidence of this, that the documents were in fact still in Trump's possession. Can you say guilty? This indictment carries 37 felony counts of willful retention of classified documents. So let's stop there for a minute. Time out for a second. This is what I hear all the time when I bring this up to MAGA loyalists. Well, what about Biden? Biden had classified documents too. They should indict him too. There's a huge difference to what happened between Biden and Trump. Yes, Biden had classified documents. But when he was told to return said documents by the federal government, he didn't lie to them or outright refuse to return them. He packed up the documents, returned them in a timely fashion in a nice little box that was clearly labeled classified, and left the issue alone. He didn't lie or play the victim or pretend he didn't know what they were talking about. That's the biggest difference between the two. And this is by no means me defending Biden. I'll get to that here in a minute. The third indictment was directly related to the January 6, 2021 insurrection attempt when dozens of Trump loyalists, and we know they were Trump loyalists because they were waving his flag and live streaming in support of Make America Great Again, which is Trump's rally cry, stormed the Capitol and broke into several key legislative offices, including the office of Nancy Pelosi. Trump faces 4 felony counts in this one: conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to obstruct an official proceeding, obstruction of an attempt to obstruct an official proceeding, and conspiracy against rights. He's lucky there's not a charge for conspiracy to attempt murder on the vice president. This was a direct result of his Stop the Steal campaign, which he used to make people that were loyal to him believe that the election had been stolen through whatever nefarious means suits his fancy for that day of the week. This indictment came after members of the Proud Boys, I like to call it terrorist group, came forward and admitted that under oath that Trump had informed them that they would be set to go storm the Capitol on the day that Congress had scheduled to officially recognize that Joe Biden had won the 2020 presidential election. Staying on that whole Stop the Steal farce, we get to the fourth indictment. This one came about after it was discovered by officials in Fulton County, Georgia, that Trump had instructed via telephone that Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, quote unquote, find 11,870 votes. This, of course, was after he had lost key electoral college votes in Georgia because he lost the state by, you guessed it, 11,870 votes. Trump, along with 18 other co-conspirators, including former New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani and South Carolina Representative Lindsey Graham, were charged with conspiracy, election fraud, and racketeering. Now, this is why I'm bringing all of this up, other than to say, yeah, Trump sucks. This is a topic I wanted to cover on both this episode and the next one that I'll be filming after this one. Hopefully without the mic being muted this time. Long story. And that topic is the ever-growing problem of toxic tribalism in this country. By the way, Trump loyalists are far from the only guilty on this one, or guilty party from this one. So if it feels like I'm picking on you because you voted for Trump twice, just chillax, grab some popcorn. I'm going to get to everybody here in a minute. Chill. This speaks to a much bigger psychological issue, one that I feel goes unchecked for many in this country, and that is the fear that they always have to be on the right side of everything. If they are wrong on even one topic or one viewpoint, they get defensive. They feel like they have to lash out in some way or another. And their whole worldview comes crumbling down because they can't admit that they are wrong on anything. Take, for instance, the economy. Yes, right now the economy sucks. And that's putting it nicely. If you try to tell Trump loyalists who are using that as a talking point of how much better things were under him than they are under Biden, that this is a global problem and not just a US problem, they do one of two things. They either get defensive and shut out any kind of criticism against Trump, or they leave the conversation altogether. Likewise, if you try to tell people that are just so enamored with electric vehicles that they can't see the obvious flaws with the current design, they too get defensive or leave the conversation altogether. Sorry, breathing. See, I told you I wasn't going to just go after the Trumpists. That's what I'm going to call you guys now, Trumpists. The same can be said if you bring up flaws with religion. I can't tell you how many times I get bashed for being an LDS hater anytime that I bring up anything negative about the LDS Church. The joys of living in Utah. Or flaws with any politician or celebrity. Look at what happened recently with actors Mila Kunis and Ashton Kutcher. Now, I don't mean to get into entertainment here and cross the streams, but when it was pointed out to both Kutcher and Kunis that their support of former That 70s Show co-star Danny Masterson, after he was found guilty of sexual assault, that was a bad look, the Kunis and Kutcher stands were quickly to say, well, he was their friend, and they were showing support for their friend, and they didn't know. Or again, they just leave the conversation altogether. I was recently very heavily criticized when I made the comment about the Democratic Party and how they need to do better in selecting better candidates. I believe my exact statement was something along the lines of, surely we as a nation can do better than Trump versus Biden Part 2, right? Right? That was countered with, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Biden's doing great. Is he though? Is he? I don't mean to sound like a Debbie Downer here. I don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer here. But putting Biden up against Trump yet again is going to result in disaster. While many won't say it out loud, I don't think Biden wins this one twice. Trump will have his Trumpists. Biden will have his loyalists. It's the people caught in the middle, as well as the younger crowd. That's going to be the key. That is going to be the main key for this coming election, especially the younger crowd, the younger voters. And my point in bringing that up was that Biden and the DNC have done an absolute shit job of getting the attention of disenfranchised voters and the younger voters. Biden has tried on numerous occasions to relieve college students of their debts with mixed results. But, and this is the key, Biden and the DNC have not done a great job of addressing other issues with moderate voters. Trump is going to use Hunter Biden's alleged criminal behavior and how Biden has an in with privatized prisons and why isn't marijuana legalized federally right now? And he's going to eat Sleepy Joe alive. By no means am I rooting for this. Anybody that knows me personally knows how much I despise Donald Trump. I am dreading it happening. But unless something major happens in the next 10 months, be it a criminal conviction against Trump that prevents him from running, or Joe Biden doing something incredibly beneficial to the moderate or young voters, I fear it's going to happen. The problem is I've lost faith in the DNC doing anything that benefits their chances of winning or their elected key votes. I mean, look at last year's key midterm elections. I would go online and I would, see a Democratic candidate going up against somebody, whether it be somebody going up against Marjorie Taylor Greene or somebody going up against Kevin McCarthy or any number of these other candidates. And their whole campaign is revolved around, we're not Trump. We're not like Trump. We're not Trump supporters. Okay. Do you have a policy on healthcare? It's not the same one that Trump has. Okay. What's your view on the economy? Well, we're not in bed with the elites like Trump is. Okay. What about foreign policy? Well, we're going to be friends with our neighbors and our allies, unlike Trump. Okay. That's great. Great for you. How did that work out? You got the Senate. Great for you. But you lost the House as a result. And look at the shit show that's turned out to be. Even now, as I'm recording this, the House of Representatives can't even decide on who is going to be the Speaker of the House after they threw a temper tantrum and voted Kevin McCarthy out because he had the unmitigated gall and audacity to compromise with the Democrats over a financial plan for next year. But if I try to tell anybody on either side of the insanity line any of this, I get called a hater or I get accused of batting for the other side. And no, I'm going to say this slowly and clearly for everybody up front, for all the red hats in the back, everybody in between, so that y'all can understand me and understand the words coming out of my mouth. Just because I'm anti-Trump does not mean I am pro-Biden. Let's just nip that in the bud once and for all. The Democrats had a real chance for a real game changer for president back in 2016. His name was Senator Bernie Sanders. And they fucked him over just to watch Hillary lose and give this country 4 years of the political equivalent of herpes. I just don't want to see that happen again. Is that really too much to ask? I want to thank everybody for watching, listening, downloading, and hyping up the show. This has been a long time coming, and I wanted to make sure that the time was right before I brought it back. Right now, the plan is to drop an entertainment episode on Wednesday and a tech episode on Friday, so keep an eye out on all the platforms for those. In case you don't know, you can find the podcast on Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, Facebook, and YouTube. Quick programming note, we are still, as of this recording, in the process of finishing up a couple of things with Apple Podcasts. So the episode may be a little bit late on that platform, but don't worry, we are coming back on that as well. Also, Google Podcasts is going away as of mid-2024, but no worries, since we're already on YouTube and Google Podcasts is transitioning to YouTube anyway, we've got that base covered. Thank you again to everybody that has watched, listened, downloaded, donated, all the things for the podcast. And for the first time in a very long time, remember to include your closing tax. This has been a Galactic Digital Studios production.